You know that feeling, right? You're in a high-pressure situation and your mind just goes blank. It's like a TV screen filled with static. You're desperately trying to pull out a simple fact or make a decision, but there's just nothing there. And we almost always blame ourselves. We think, I panicked or I wasn't prepared enough. But what if that whole explanation is just flat out wrong? What if it's not a personal failure at all, but your own biology doing exactly what it was designed to do?
I mean, really think about it for a second. That huge exam where you knew the material inside and out, but you couldn't get a single word on the page. Or that big presentation at work where you just lost your train of thought completely. Maybe it was a tough conversation and the perfect thing to say only popped into your head hours later. We've all been there, and it always feels like we fail.
But this is the big idea I want you to walk away with. That mental blank is not a sign of weakness. It's not some psychological flaw you need to fix. It is a predictable, automatic, and totally normal biological function. What's happening in your head isn't a meltdown, it's a switch being flipped, one that's been hardwired into us for survival.
So let's start by just tearing down this whole blank mind myth. We call it choking or panicking, and we assume our brain just gave up on us. But that interpretation fundamentally misses the point of what's actually going on under the hood, because it all starts with a huge misunderstanding of what stress even is.
See, we talk about stress like it's an emotion, like being sad or happy, something we should just be able to manage with a better attitude or by thinking more positively. But that's not how your nervous system sees it at all. From a biological point of view, stress isn't just a feeling you have, it's a physical state your body enters.
And here's what's so important to get. Stress is your body's response when the brain perceives a threat. And I'm really emphasizing that word, perceives. Because your brain doesn't really stop to ask if the threat is a saber-toothed tiger about to eat you or just a really scary spreadsheet. If it thinks something's a threat, it triggers the exact same physical chain of events.
And that's the fundamental mismatch of modern life, isn't it? Our brains are basically running on this ancient survival software. So a tight deadline, a final exam, getting up to speak in front of a crowd, even a simple argument, all these modern pressures get processed by our ancient brain in the same way, as a threat to our survival.
That's really the simple trigger for the whole thing. It doesn't really matter what the situation is. If your brain decides that something important is on the line, your reputation, your grades, your job, it flags the situation as a potential threat, and then it flips the survival switch.
And the second that switch is flipped, your brain makes a decision. And it's not a conscious one. You don't get a vote. It happens in a fraction of a second, automatically. Your brain's #1 mission changes from thinking and analyzing to just plain surviving. And it starts this massive system-wide reallocation of your body's resources.
It happens in a flash. It's a simple 3-step process. First, boom, a threat is detected. Second, your brain immediately starts pulling energy away from things it considers non-essential and shoves it towards survival functions. And third, bam, survival mode is activated. Your heart rate skyrockets, stress hormones flood your system, and your focus narrows down to a tiny pinpoint.
And the whole point of this entire process is to get you to act fast. See, in our evolutionary past, speed was way more valuable than deep thought when you were staring down a predator. The goal was not to write a clever analysis of the tiger, the goal was to run. So your brain is always going to prioritize speed over insight.
Okay, so this whole thing sets up a kind of battle inside your own head. It's a conflict between two very different parts of your brain, the slow, deliberate thinker and the fast, impulsive reactor. And let me tell you, when you're under stress, it is not a fair fight.
So on one side, you've got your prefrontal cortex. That's the thinker. It's the sophisticated CEO of your brain, responsible for reasoning, planning, complex decisions. It's brilliant, but it's slow, and it burns a ton of energy. And on the other side, you have the amygdala, the reactor. Think of it as your brain's super-fast smoke detector. When stress hits, the brain basically cuts the power to the CEO's office and hands total control over to the fast reactive smoke detector.
And this right here is probably the single most important idea to get your head around. When your mind goes blank, you haven't suddenly become less intelligent. You're not incapable. You have simply and temporarily lost access to the thinking part of your brain because the survival part has staged a hostile takeover.
So now, let's go back to those moments. Freezing up during that big test, that was your amygdala taking the wheel, prioritizing escape over information recall. Losing your train of thought in the middle of a sentence, that was your brain literally pulling resources away from your prefrontal cortex. These aren't personal failures. They're the completely predictable results of a brain in survival mode.
Okay, so this brings us to a final, really critical point. If this is all just biology, that explains why the most common advice we get for dealing with pressure, just focus, push through it, try harder, why that advice so often fails miserably.
The big flaw in all that force it advice is that it treats the brain like it's broken. But it's not malfunctioning. It's doing exactly what millions of years of evolution designed it to do. That advice targets your behavior, but the root of the problem is your biology. You can't use willpower to force a part of your brain that is temporarily offline to suddenly come back online. It just doesn't work that way.
This means that real performance under pressure isn't about brute force. It is not about trying harder. It's about understanding this biological state you're in, and then learning how to signal to your own nervous system that it's safe. That's what restores your brain's ability to think clearly. I want you to let that one sink in for a minute. You cannot out-discipline a nervous system that is in survival mode. No amount of willpower or grit or motivation can override a system that genuinely believes it is fighting for its life. The solution isn't to fight your own biology. It's to learn how to work with it. And that, of course, leaves us with the big question. If just pushing through is the wrong approach, then what's the right one? If you can't force your brain to think, how do you actually learn to manage your own biology? To stay calm and clear-headed when it matters most? Because that, right there, is the real secret to performing under pressure.